So, my name is Alvin Lui, and I'm with Courage is a Habit. I want to ask you guys a question. How many people here are parents? Everybody here. How many people are grandparents? All right. So I'm going to ask you guys a question. So, when you first brought your baby home, especially the first one, okay, how many people did you let hold that baby? Did you let your husband hold the baby? Maybe not even that. Your sister, your mother, right? And then when she started crawling around, or when he started crawling around, how many rooms in the house did you let him in? Was he hanging out in the garage, playing with the saw, the coolant? Couldn't even go to his kitchen, right? In his own house, he probably couldn't access 90% of the house. And then when he got older, you probably curated what he watched, I hope. Because we see the devastating effects when parents don't curate what they watch on social media and things. He probably did that. Yeah. When he got older, you curated who his friends were. You wanted to be sure that he hung out with people that had your values. Went on and on and on. It's almost as if good parenting has always been about exclusion. Good parenting has always and will always be about exclusion. So what makes this time so special where you take your child to a building called school and they point a finger at your face and tell you, what's the matter? You don't want inclusion? Are you a bigot? What makes this time so special? So today, this weekend, you're going to hear a lot about what's happening in this country, what's happening in school. What we specialize is we create tools and strategies for parents to understand what's happening in public and private schools. But no matter what you hear today, there's really two things that make this work. There's two things that make everything from the transgender ideology to open borders to what they're doing to your children in schools. There's two things that makes it work. The first one is they weaponize your kindness. They weaponize your kindness. So what does that really mean? It means that they take advantage of your kindness all the while telling you how unkind you are. And this is a bad matchup for Christians. I'm going to be honest, it's a bad matchup for everybody in this room because all of you are good people. You hate no one. You're going to give your shirt off your back to anyone that needs it. And these people take advantage of that. They will tell you your religion is oppressive, and the moment you fight back, they go, what would Jesus do? They weaponize your kindness. Now, I'm going to ask you, in your public schools today, in your classrooms, doesn't matter if it's a red or blue state, in your classroom, does it look like you people are unkind? Look at your classrooms. Filled with BLM flags and transgender flags and LGBT flags and everything, anti-white this and anti-American this. If you were truly bigoted and unkind people, would you have allowed any of that in your classrooms? Does it look like you people are unkind? They weaponize your kindness. They take advantage of your empathy. So every time you hear that, oh, we're just doing this, what's the matter? Don't you want this? Remember, they're weaponizing your kindness. That's how nearly everything that got us to where we are in this country works. And that's exactly what the school officials and the counselors, the school counselors and things of that nature, that's what they're doing. Remember, good parenting has always been about exclusion. So if you remember nothing else today about my little time with you here, reject inclusion, embrace exclusion. Good parenting will always be about exclusion, especially when it comes to children, because as adults, if we want to put ourselves in a potentially dangerous situation, we have ways out. We can physically get our way out. We have financial freedom. We can drive, but little children can't. It is more important that little children learn exclusion. So teaching your children to be kind is not a priority today. Teaching them how to draw boundaries is. So don't ever let these people weaponize your kindness. The second thing that makes all this work is called language contamination. I'm going to tell you what language contamination is, and I'm going to give you an example. And I promise you that once I give it to you, you will never forget it. Okay? So here's the first one. Here's how we define language contamination. Language contamination is the use of vocabulary, but not your dictionary. The use your vocabulary for not your dictionary. So I'm going to do an exercise with everybody. Okay? If I told you I was going to teach a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old empathy, okay? Not an 18-year-old, 17-year-old, not a 2-year-old. So let's say around 7, 8, 9. If I said I was going to teach my child empathy, I want you guys to take just 5 seconds and think, what would that look like? What would that sound like? Okay? So if I was going to say I was going to teach a 7 or 8-year-old empathy, what do you think I'm teaching her? Okay, go ahead. Anybody at this table? What would that look like? Listening. Okay. What else? Shout it out. Being quiet and not saying what you think would be teaching empathy. Okay, one more. One more. What does compassion mean? What does that mean in practice? Great. So I would say that if I went around the room, everybody would probably have something similar that these 4 people said. Agreed? You're teaching a 7, 8, 9-year-old thinking, don't talk, listen, put yourself in other shoes. Okay. So they use your vocabulary, but not your dictionary. Your parents go in and you say, hey, to your principal or teachers, you're teaching my child this. You're teaching them all this indoctrination, transgenderism, critical race theory. They'll say, that's not what we're doing. All we're teaching is empathy. And you go, oh, good. Oh, good. I teach my kids empathy too. And then you go home. Here's how they teach empathy. They start in kindergarten and start introducing things like intersectionality and marginalized people and all those different things. So the idea is when that child from kindergarten, first and second grade, by the time she gets to be 16, 17, 18, or even younger today, 14, 15, 16, when a man walks into her locker room or her bathroom, she has to have empathy for him. But wait a minute, though. What did you just say? What was your example? Being kind to others. So she has to be kind. You said, shut your mouth, don't talk? Someone said, put yourself in their shoes, have compassion. Now she goes, how would I feel if someone kicked me out of my locker room? How would I feel if someone kicked me out of my bathroom? I have to be considerate of his human dignity and his human rights. You hear that a lot. You can't deport illegals because it's against human rights. They use your vocabulary, but not your dictionary. And that works simply because they weaponize your kindness. Those are the 2 things that work hand in hand. They weaponize your kindness and they use language contamination. And now we have a nation of people that don't know what to do and don't know what to say. So no one's silencing you. You guys are silencing yourself. Because you go, oh, what if I don't want to sound like this. I don't want to sound like that. It's all dishonest. And that's how they've been able to push. The question, I think, earlier, was why are they pushing the transgenderism? Why is it a hill they're willing to die on? Because that's the hill that can separate parents from their children. And if you want to create a revolution, Mao knew it, Stalin knew it, Hitler knew it. If you want to create a revolution, you have to get the parents out of the way. You have to get parents out of the way if you want to create a revolution. There is no such thing as a 40-year-old social justice warrior or 40-year-old revolutionist. They're all young. They're all teenagers and beyond. My great-grandfather ran from Mao's communism. He came here by himself. They dragged him out of his little bakery and they beat him. But it wasn't soldiers that beat him. It was college kids. The exact same blueprint that's happening. And the transgenderism is just another way to separate children from their parents. I will give you another example of language contamination. There are a lot of groups which we call the transgender cult. They're going around different states, pushing, lobbying, passing bills called the anti-conversion therapy. Now, if I say conversion therapy to most normal people, they're thinking about the old conversion therapy. You're strapping a kid who thinks he's gay and you're shocking him and all those different things, all those really horrific things. But they know that terminology hasn't been used in a public discourse for quite some time. So when they say, aren't you against conversion therapy? Even good people, normal people will say, yeah, I am. But what the transgender cult means by conversion therapy is this. While the therapist industry has been largely co-opted by the transgender cult, there are still good therapists and child psychologists and such out there. And they know that there's no such thing as a trans child. There's no such thing as a trans child. No child is born in the wrong body. What a ridiculous, horrible thing to say. Every child that gets wrapped up in the transgender cult usually has some sort of pre-existing condition. They've been abused, sexual abuse, bulimia. They have high anxiety, depression. They come from really broken homes, or they just get wrapped up in just this brainwashing. But they all usually have some underlying issue. Autism is very high. Over 40% of kids that get wrapped up in the transgender cult is on the autistic spectrum. So when a therapist sees a child before this transgender cult and what they've done in schools, pushing that in the classroom and through school counselors, they would try to find what the underlying issue is. And when you solve the underlying issue, this made-up gender dysphoria magically disappears. Anti-conversion therapy bills says that a counselor or a psychologist cannot do that. If they do that, they're breaking the law. And legislators, people who aren't really for this, they're passing these laws because of this language contamination, because they're so dishonest and they're using a lot of emotional blackmail. You may have seen some of that yourself, sir. And so that is a great example of language contamination. They use your vocabulary, but not your dictionary. All right. So this is going to be part of the links that's going to be sent out. So you may not potentially read everything because it's kind of small, so I'll read it to you. But this is something that we created for parents that they can print out and bring to school boards and talk to their community, because there's so many tentacles of indoctrination in K through 12. And in the short time I have with you, obviously I can spend half a day talking about that or more. We created this. We call it the K through 12 brainwashing method. And this is essentially the pillars that are governing your schools. Okay? They're not separate. I hear this a lot from parents. Oh, first of all, they're doing this, and now they're doing that. When is it going to stop? They're not separate things. This is one cohesive umbrella. Okay? Again, all this works because they're weaponizing your kindness and to use language contamination. Okay? So that's why we got to set that first. So the entire umbrella that's governing K through 12 and essentially our country is critical race theory. Critical race theory simply says, no matter, they can word salad all they want. Critical race theory says this country's racist, this country also oppressive, and you either fall as an oppressor or the oppressed. That's it. And then everything else stems from there. And then from there, they invent groups to be oppressed. It starts with, if you're white, you're an oppressor. If you're not white, you're oppressed. And then it starts to break down. Like, well, if you're a black person, but you believe in this, you're oppressor too. So they start breaking these groups down, which is why now it's the victimhood Olympics. Everybody wants to be part of a victim group. They've made victimhood a social currency. This is why you have so many kids. They love to be oppressed. They love to say they're being bullied, because it's now social currency. So understand that everything stems from critical race theory. But critical race theory is simply a theory. That's it. It's a theory. It's a philosophy. So how do you deliver that philosophy? You deliver that philosophy through two things. The first one is the marketing. We don't call it DEI, we call it DIE. Diversity, inclusion, equity. Everything DIE touches dies. We call it DIE. So that's the marketing. That's the emotional blackmail. What's the matter? Don't you like inclusion? What's the matter? Don't you want diversity? So that gets you to stand down and say, okay, that's what it is. So that's the marketing. The delivery system for critical race theory is something called social emotional learning. Like I said, I can go half a day on that because that's what's changed your entire culture in your school. It is a mental health Trojan horse that talks about safety, mental health. They survey your children, they manipulate data. And that's not just a class or a course, which it is, but it's more than that. It's a transformation of your K through 12. It is not constitutional because it's delivering values and beliefs, and it's against it should be against the Constitution. If we have lawsuits, that would be great. So it is robbing parents of their rights because it's delivering essentially what is a religion through mental health. And that's social emotional learning. They're taking data, they're manipulating the data, and they're saying your school is not inclusive, evidence-based, data-driven. Studies show your school needs more representation. And that's how you get your books. That's how you get your flags. That's how you get. So the data through social emotional learning is the bloodline of all the indoctrination. So that's how we're delivering critical race theory through SEL, through your schools. So now the last part is, how does it get into your classroom? It gets into your classroom with a teaching method called culturally responsive teaching, the other CRT. That's how lazy these people are. They don't even bother changing the acronym. It's just the other CRT. So culturally responsive teaching basically says that a teacher that is indoctrinated herself, which is the majority of teachers today, especially coming out of colleges the last 7 years, they will be able to take any subject and create generative discussions. So let's take math. You would think, there's no way you can make math. There's no way you can make math political. Okay, so I'll give you a quick example. So let's say you're in the 2nd grade, 3rd grade, and here's the math problem. Tommy is in the car with his mom and dad, and they're going to the amusement park. The amusement park is 50 miles away. They've already driven 30 miles. How many more miles before they arrive at the amusement park? A pretty standard. And if you as a parent look at your curriculum and these are the word problems, you'd be like, great, no problem. The answer being 20 miles doesn't matter. So that doesn't matter. What a culturally responsive teacher will say, so before we get to the answer, let's talk about, has everybody been to an amusement park? And some kids will raise their hands, some kids will not. And they'll say, why haven't you? Some kids will go, I don't know, my parents can't afford it. Now you have a discussion about social economics, about inequities. Well, does everybody have a mom and a dad? Tommy's driving, and then some kids will go, yeah, and then eventually the teacher just keeps probing and probing until the Tommy goes, well, across the street, there's 2 moms. And now you have a discussion about LGBTQ. Does everybody have a car? Some people don't have a car. Why? Some people have to take the bus. Inner cities. Now you have a discussion on all the different things. Should you be driving a car? What about the environment? That's culturally responsive teaching. Any subject can be used. And so that's why when we say, when you say they're teaching critical race theory in schools, what do they always tell you?
No, we're not.
No, we're not. You know what? I'm going to tell you right now. They're not technically lying, although there are some states that are actually teaching critical race theory as a graduation requirement. Here's what they're doing. They are not teaching your children what critical race theory is. They're teaching them how to live, behave, and think like a critical race theorist. They're not teaching this as this is a theory, this is when it started, here's all the authors. They're not teaching what that is. They're not teaching queer theory as a theory as to what it is. John Money, people like that. They're influencing your children how to live like a critical race theorist, how to behave like a queer theorist. This is a lifestyle. This is a lifestyle. This is not them teaching it. They are influencing your children how to live like one. One of the things that's hard, I think, when we do this on these events is that we bring you a lot of bad news. And it's very heavy. And then you come in super energized and you leave going, I'm not an AG. What do you want me to do about it? I'm a marketer. I'm a web designer. I'm not this man right here. What are you going to do about it? Right? We didn't get here because any one of our opponents did anything major. There wasn't one big law. There wasn't one big battle that, boom, now they've taken over our media, social media, except X, our mainstream media, our academia, every cereal box, every shaving cream, every children's cartoon. There was nothing, not one, not two, not 10. There wasn't 100 things that happened. They started with the individual, and they started with language. You can't say that. You can't say that. You can't say that. You can't say it like that. You can't say that in front of that person. It always starts with language. Language changes thoughts. Thoughts change behavior. And behavior changes culture. And politics is a downstream from culture. By the time great men like him start suing, it's pretty bad. Because even if he wins, it's hard to change your local situation. Even if he can stop Title I or Title IX, the Title IX strip, your children are already brainwashed to believe they're going to die if they don't get puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones. Even if great men like him win, it doesn't change the minds once it's delivered into your schools through culturally responsive teaching and social-emotional learning. So what can everybody do? Every single person. You don't need a platform. You don't need to have a blog or a show or anything like that. You start by rejecting inclusive language. Stop letting these people weaponize your kindness. Reject inclusive language. That's all inclusive language is. It's a tactic designed to control your speech so it can control your behavior or your thoughts and then your behavior. So start there. Reject inclusive language. Everybody can do that. Don't worry about, oh, if I say it this way, it's going to offend someone. Oh, if I say it this way, it's not going to appeal to a certain group. Don't worry about that. You speak it if it's true. And how they feel is not your problem. Stop worrying about other people's feelings because they've weaponized your kindness all the way here. Being defensive. These are the things that good people automatically say. Someone, you say, I don't think a child should be on puberty blockers before they can drive. And then they attack you. And then you go, no, well, I want a child to feel welcome. It's not that I don't. Once you start doing that, you've accepted their premise. No, one of my best friends is black. My cousin's gay. You all have said that. I know it. When you say that, you're accepting their premise that you're unkind. So don't do that. Ignore what they're saying and go after the things that they're trying to push on your kids. Go after that. Once you start defending, you've lost the plot. You've lost the plot. If you do not stand up for your child today, they will live on their knees tomorrow. However hard you think it is for you to be called names and labels, if you do not take those arrows today, you can raise your child well. They will target your children because they will be so different than everybody else. So if you're at a corporation and you go, oh, I can't push back against anti-bias training. Oh, I can't push back against this. If you can't push that back now, imagine the world your children are going to live in. So I'll go back to my first question. What makes this time so special? If your child or your grandchild was in a burning building, especially if you're a grandparent, because my mother has no pictures of me anymore in her house as all the grandkids. It's like, I don't exist. My mother would throw me in a burning building to save the grandkids. This is the truth. If she was here, she'd be like, yeah, of course. You live long enough. So what makes this time so special? What makes this time so special? You would be able to if you had a child or grandchild in a burning building, you would run in that burning building having no thought of your own life, as long as you can save their life. You wouldn't stop and say, I wonder what this person might think. I should go to an event. I should download a tool. I wonder what Courage is Habit thinks about this. You would do it. So what makes this time so special? They can point a finger at your face, call you a bigot and a transphobe and a racist, and all of a sudden you go, I don't know how to stand up for my child. What a ridiculous thing to say you don't know how to stand up for your child. Of course you do. You don't know how to stand up for your children. You don't know what to say because you're worried about labels, because they've weaponized your kindness, and they've tricked you with the language contamination. So, if you remember nothing else, reject inclusion, embrace exclusion. Good parenting has always been about exclusion. Make courage your habit, because if you don't stand up for your children today, they will live on their knees tomorrow. Thank you.